Alright, so assignment 3 from Unit 17, and it's all about the work of the emergency services. The first thing to note really is that this is an illustrated report. Okay, so what we're looking at here is to have some pictures included in the report that are going to help with explaining the points that you're trying to make. So please don't put pictures in there just because it's a good thing to do. Make sure that the pictures are there and they are helping you with actually completing the assignment. So let's go into the main part of the assignment then. There are two scenarios here that you need to be aware of. The first one, as you can see here, you're working for an organisation that investigates fires and incidents, and you've been asked to produce a report that shows how the fires and incidents may have been prevented. So for this scenario, it's very much about the prevention side that we've discussed during classroom sessions. For the second scenario, you can see here that I've made reference to what's become known as the M5 crash, and happened in 2011, and was and still is the most serious traffic accident, that wrong road traffic collision that there's ever been. And you can see that you've been asked to write an essay into the way that the services responded to the crash. The services are very interested to find your findings, and you're not asked to make any recommendations for improvement. So it's just about what the services did and how they reacted to that incident. The learning outcomes, as you can see, understand domestic fire and incident prevention measures, and be able to review the practical work undertaken by the public and emergency services in dealing with fires and incidents. As far as the handout date is concerned, I'm going to talk to you about that separately during the session. Okay, let's get into it then. P3. So, you're required to explain how accidents can be prevented. Now, if you're doing an explanation, you're going to have to go into a lot of detail. This is not something that you can do in one or two sentences. So, when we're talking about prevention, we're talking about the public service involvement, as you can see here. And that can be, when we're talking about public service involvement, we're talking about police, but we're also talking about the local authorities. And by local authority, I mean city councils and county councils who work alongside the emergency services to try and prevent incidents. And they'll work very closely together. And we're also talking about things like the use of media and TV. Remember, we looked during the session at TV advertising campaigns. We're also talking here about the fatal fall. We're talking about what the services actually do. So when they go outside schools, you remember the example I used, where they tried to get the fire appliance around the block and it took them 40 minutes. It should have taken them 2 minutes, that sort of thing. There's also a notice board in the corridor, and you'll see an article that I've put on that notice board with regard to child seats and how they're not being used properly. And also the police in particular will target people who aren't wearing the seat belts and people who are using their mobile phones, all that sort of thing. So there's an awful lot of there that you can write about. Also the work of ROSPA. you did this as your homework activity, and they do an awful lot. Their website's very informative, so that will give you a lot of information. But a lot of this is going to be about your research um, into what is going on at the moment. So you need to be looking at things like the Mercury website, Leicester Mercury. There's always things in there. You haven't got to go back too long to find out information on that. Alright, so that's P3. Let's go on to P4. Another explanation, but this one is all about the prevention of fires. And it's all the stuff that you've done before. When we were in the session and you did that little survey of B block in the college, and you were looking at things that are mentioned here. Extinguishers, detectors, and all the other methods that are used to prevent fires. Now, don't forget, when you're doing this bit, you're talking about preventing fires. So we want to be talking about what is done to either stop them or stop them from spreading. So don't be mentioning fire exits and things like that. That's nothing to do with preventing fires. We want to be talking about how we either stop them from breaking out in the first place or how we stop them from spreading. And you've only got to look around and see all the fire prevention methods that are available. Again, lots of research that you can do on this, and a lot of websites that will feature advice to the public on how they can prevent fires from breaking out in the first place. Okay, so we've done that. Let's go on to the merit. I know that there are some learners who are looking at the merit, and this is the comparison piece that we're looking at here. And you've got to look at comparing different methods of preventing fires and incidents. So you might look at TV campaigns. You might look at what's available on the internet. You might look at advertisements in newspapers. You might look at how the fire service visits premises, visit homes and give advice, all that sort of thing. And you're looking at one way and then comparing it with another way that these fires and incidents can be prevented. So as long as you've got lots of comparisons there, so you're saying, for instance, well, okay, they could use the internet, and that's really good because lots of people use it and it's readily available, and you can look at it 24 hours a day and all that sort of thing. But then again, people have got to choose to visit those websites, haven't they? Whereas if you've got a TV campaign, well, if it's during the advertisements, which obviously it's going to be, then that's going to be far more effective, or could be, because, well, you're sat there and you're watching TV and suddenly it comes on. You're not going to just walk out of the room. The way that also the TV campaigns that we looked at, they were all pretty hard hitting. We saw that, and we saw how graphic they were. Well, can you really put that message across by using a picture in a newspaper? Well, perhaps not. A picture can be quite graphic, but then again, that movement that you get in video, and also the sound effects. You remember the girl who'd broken her arm, and you heard the crunching as it went back into place after she'd been hit by the car. Well, that doesn't really come across, does it? In a picture in a newspaper. So that's the sort of thing that you need to be looking at for the merit. Okay, so we'll move on now to P5, and this is all about the practical work undertaken by the public services, and you're reviewing it. Now, if you're reviewing something, think of it like this. You watch a TV program, and somebody asks you, okay, what was the TV program about? What happened? What was the storyline? What was the acting like? You're going to give quite a lot of information to them, aren't you? To give them a good idea about what it was about and what the TV program was about. Well, that's exactly the same thing that you're going to do here. And here, just think of it as that question there. What do the services actually do? This is where the second scenario comes in when you're talking about the M5 crash. And there's a lot of information that you can get from the internet about the M5 crash. There's also a lot of information contained on Moodle about what the services actually do. And there's also your own research. The book, the level 2 book, has got a lot of this. And you've got to think about everything that's certainly in the M5 crash, the police service, the fire service, and the ambulance service were doing in dealing with that. I've given you some ideas here on the assignment brief, but this is only a few. Okay, this will not do. If you only include these 3 different things that the services do in your assignment, you won't pass. Think of, when you do your research about the M5 crash, exactly what was involved. There's going to be an awful lot more that, for instance, the police were involved in than just witness statements, investigations and cordons. And in actual fact, for the M5 crash, there weren't any cordons, and there weren't any cordons because it happened on a motorway. So you can't even include that. But there's a whole lot more that you can include when you think about it and you conduct your research. Also, separately, you've got to look at this part, and this is what happens afterwards. So after everything has been dealt with, what happens then? Now, SOCOs, we did a whole session on this, is going to be part of this. But basically, anybody who's involved in an investigation afterwards. Just a hint here, a lot of students have made the mistake previously of referring to SOCOs in their dealings with the M5 crash. Well, SOCO didn't deal with the M5 crash. So you're going to have to look at the work of SOCO separately. You're also going to have to look at the police investigations into either the M5 crash or any other investigations after an incident, and also the fire service and their investigations after an incident. So I'm really looking to see what you know, what you can write about as far as what goes on after the incident has happened. The only thing I will say is I would need to see some mention of SOCO and what they do in detail. Okay, so that's P5, and we're going to go on to the merit now, M3. And as you can see here, it's an analysis. Now, if you conduct an analysis, you've got to look at what the services do, why they do it, and what they're trying to achieve. And that's really what I've put in the rest of the assignment brief. So ask yourselves these questions. Why do the services approach fire and safety incidents in this way? When they do what they do, why do they do it like that? It's that simple. And you could include things like why do they have separate roles, but when you're doing that, you're also going to be looking at how they work together. So okay, the police have got their role, and the ambulance service have got their role, and the fire service have got their role. You've already talked about that in the past, but you're going to say, well, okay, why are they doing that? Why are they concentrating on that? And when they have, whilst they're concentrating on that, are there some of those roles going to be overlapping? Okay, and if those roles overlap, okay, What does that mean? They're working together, aren't they? How do they work together? Why do they work together? What are they trying to achieve? And how does that work? Does it work well? Does everybody know what role they've got? And if they do know what role they've got, how do they know what role they've got? That's the sort of detail that I want to see in your analysis. And the final part here is the final P6. Now, a lot of people forget this, so they'll go through here and say, okay, so here's P5, here's P3, here's P4, here's P5. Oh, that's it. And then suddenly, oh dear, we've completely missed P6. So don't forget P6, it's right at the end. And this is a review of the work of the fire service. So it's a concentration on the work of the fire service alone. Don't bring any other services into it unless you're going to talk about how the fire service work alongside or together with another service. That's the only time you're going to mention anything about any other service. And as you can see here, it's very much linked to P5. And I've said that because some of what you have mentioned and what you will have talked about in P5 will be relevant for P6, because when you go into your research about the M5 crash, you'll be talking about the work of the fire service. Of course you will, because they were heavily involved in it. And that's great, but what you also need to do in either referring to what you've said in P5 or reiterating it, saying it again for P6. But you've also got to talk about the general work. And this is where the Heinz 57 does what it says on the tin video that I showed you. It's about. It's more to being a firefighter than just putting out fires. It's the bottom line. And if you watch that video again, which you can do via Moodle, then you'll get a really good idea of the general work of the fire service. And amongst those, we're looking at all of these that we've already discussed during sessions. So fire investigation units are, you're going to need to talk about what they do and why they're needed. So they're investigating fires and they're coming up with the cause and where it started. And you remember I showed you the video about the room, how it caught fire, and you saw how the smoke had spread throughout the room, and that gave them a good clue as to where the actual fire started, where the seat of the fire was, that sort of thing. The equipment's going to be a big part of this. As you know, they have an awful lot of equipment, lots of different types of equipment. You're going to need to say how they use it and what it's used for and what it is. Road traffic collisions, RTCs, you'll have talked a lot about that in P5. All you need to do for P6 is to make sure that you have talked about it in P5. And if you have, then you can just refer back to it and say much of the emergency work that they conduct has been covered in P5. However, they're also involved in other things too, other emergencies. And you can find out what they are through research and really through a lot of the things that we've already spoken about. Rescues outside of road traffic collisions, fighting fires, of course, but lots and lots more to it than that. And also what they do after the incident has happened. And it's not just about walking away and say, okay, the fire's out, that's it, let's go, see you later. There's a lot more to it than that. And again, your research is going to assist you here by being able to find out what they do, and also to make sure that you mention everything that they do. Alright, so yes, it's quite a big assignment. Yeah, I won't deny that. But what you need to do is you need to follow a structured approach to it. Really, make sure first of all that you understand what is required. Go over the scenarios, both of them, and then tackle each bit one at a time. So look at P3 first. Get all your detailed explanations done. Get your research done, and then finish that. Then switch your attention onto P4 and go through that. Once you've done that, for those of you attempting a merit, then you can bring P3 and P4 together and go for the merit. As far as your P5 is concerned, this is all about research. This is all about getting onto the internet and getting onto Moodle and finding out what the M5 crash was all about, looking at what the services do, and then applying that to the M5 crash. The analysis, lots and lots of detail again required there. P6, this is all stuff that we've talked about during the sessions, so it shouldn't be anything that is unusual or different to you. It's all pretty much standard kind of stuff. Nothing that's a dark, closely guarded secret. And with any of this, if you need to ask me, ask any of the members of staff should be able to help you with this. And I know that for a lot of this you're going to be on holiday. I will be checking my email on a regular basis over the holiday. So if you've got a problem, got something you're not sure about, you need some advice, you need some guidance, and all you've got to do is email me, and I'm here to help. Okay, so that's it. Good luck. It's the last assignment of this unit, of Unit 17, and let's make it a good one. Let's hopefully get everybody through and passed on the first time.